Before starting this video, I do want to give a thank you to my patrons that support the channel. And if you would like to support the channel, there are some great benefits for you in the link down below. So with that, let's get into today's video. Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is Devin coming back at you with another video today on PubStompMTG. So with this video, I'm going to be upgrading the Sliver Swarm Precon deck from Commander Masters. I will say I'm pretty excited to see this Precon come to life, especially with Slivers because it is a pretty popular tribe. I will say since I've started my journey with Commander, I found Slivers to be pretty interesting because when one creature gets a super type, all creatures get a super type. And all those Slivers have a hive mentality of getting these great abilities. So with that said, I did want to give you an overview of this video. So for example, we're going to be talking about the game plan of the video. I'm also going to be talking about new cards in the box as well as reprinted cards. I'm also going to discuss some cards that you may want to consider adding to the deck so that you can release the full Sliver Swarm. But first, who are the commanders of the deck? They are two specific commanders, the face commander and the secondary commander. So for the front facing commander, we do have Sliver Gravemother. So it is a Wooburg commander, it has all colors, and it does state the legend rule does not apply to slivers you control, and it does have the ability of each sliver creature in your graveyard has Encore X, where X is its mana value. And Sliver Gravemother itself has Encore 5. So first of all, what does Encore read? You exile this card from your graveyard. For each opponent, create a token copy that attacks that opponent this turn. If able, they gain haste. Sacrifice them at the beginning of next end step. Activate only as a sorcery. This is a pretty strong commander when you think about how much slivers could be in your graveyard, and you could give them the super types when they encore onto the battlefield. I did also want to discuss the secondary commander of the box with Rukamrumul, Biologist. So she's also another Wooburg commander. When she enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type. Slivers you control and non-token creatures you control are the chosen type, in addition to their other creature types. The same is true for creature spells you control and creature cards you own that are on the battlefield. Also, you can pay 3 mana and tap her to create a 1/1 colorless Sliver creature token. So she is pretty interesting. However, I do find the Sliver Gravemother a little bit more powerful, so we're going to lean on her when building this deck. So first of all, I did want to discuss the game plan with you. It is pretty simple, especially with slivers. So constantly you want to be adding more and more slivers to the battlefield left and right so that you can overwhelm your opponents with so many different abilities on your slivers. And if your slivers do unfortunately die in the process, Sliver Gravemother could give them Encore so that they could get a last little boost so that you can win the game possibly. Because of our commander, each sliver in our graveyard will have Encores, so they will enter the battlefield. We'll get 3 different copies of them, and most importantly, they will not be legendary. So if you do have a legendary sliver in the graveyard, you could Encore it out for extra value. So with that said, let's first discuss some of the new cards that are in the pre-constructed deck. There's a lot of fun slivers to add. So I did want to list off some of the great slivers like Capricious Sliver, Hatchery Sliver, and also Regal Sliver. So with each of them, they have that ability of slivers you control have these specific abilities. With Capricious Sliver, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn, so each of your slivers will have that ability. Hatchery Sliver itself has Replicate, pay 1 and a green, and each sliver spell you cast has Replicate. The Replicate cost is equal to its mana cost. And also with Regal Sliver, it deals with Monarch, so sliver creatures you control have whenever this creature enters the battlefield, slivers you control get +1/+1 until end of turn if you're the Monarch, otherwise you become the Monarch. So each of these have some pretty unique abilities. I love Hatchery Sliver especially. Making more slivers is absolutely incredible, mainly because we want to overwhelm our opponents with slivers. I did also want to bring your attention to Lazotep Sliver. So for 3 mana and a black mana, sliver creatures you control have Afflict 2. Whenever a non-token sliver you control dies, amass slivers 2. So they brought amass again, not only just to zombies, not only just to orc armies, but we also do have a sliver army. But I will say your slivers having Afflict 2 could be pretty deadly if they decide to block into them. I did also want to bring up some non-sliver creature cards. So for example, we do have For the Ancestors for 3 mana. Choose a creature type, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal any number of cards of the chosen type from among them and put the revealed cards into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order, and it does have flashback 3 and a green. So this is great for any type of tribal deck. Also on top of that, we do have Titan of Littjara. So for 6 mana, when it enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type. You don't have to choose slivers if you're not playing a Sliver deck, but you could choose Slivers because it's in this deck, so it becomes the chosen type in addition to its other types. Like the other classic Titans, whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, you may draw a card for each other creature you control that shares a type with it. If you do, you discard a card. So let's just say you control 10 Slivers on the battlefield and you have this enter the battlefield, you'll draw 10 cards and then discard a card. This is going to gain so much value for you, especially in the late game when you have a lot of Slivers on the battlefield. So I will say one of the best cards in this deck that is actually a pretty great tribal card for any kind of tribal deck is Descendant's Fury. So for 4 mana, whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice one of them. If you do, you reveal the top card of your library until you reveal a creature card that shares a creature type with a sacrificed creature. You put that card onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So I will say this card is incredible value, just getting so much value off of just one creature swinging in for damage, and if it's a 1/1, you could just swing that in and possibly get a bigger creature on the battlefield. So those are some of the new cards that I did want to bring up in this video so that you could get a good game plan and idea of what you want to do with the deck. I did also want to bring your attention to some of the great reprints in this box. So I will say a nice reprint in this set is Sliver Hivelord. So for 5 mana, Sliver creatures you control have indestructible, including itself. So what's nice about this card is you could actually play it as the commander if you wanted to, because it is a legendary creature. If you decided, hey, I want to swap this out with Sliver Gravemother, you totally can. It's definitely a great replacement too, because all your creatures have indestructible is incredible value by itself. This deck does also come with another favorite Sliver of mine with Cloud Shredder Sliver. So simply, your Sliver creatures you control have flying and haste, so it does give you evasion, and they could swing in right away for damage. And if you do have enough Slivers on the battlefield that you just cascaded upon, you totally can, and swing in for victory. Another great card in this deck is Vanquisher's Banner. So for 5 mana, you choose a creature type when it enters the battlefield. Also, it does give an anthem to your Sliver creature specifically when you choose that creature type. And whenever you cast a Sliver spell, you could also draw a card on top of that, so you're replacing that card you just casted. So this is just such a great card in any type of tribal deck you're playing. So I will say something about this deck that's pretty awesome is the fact that it has a lot of Slivers that you do want to be playing. I didn't want to go over all of them because there's just too many Slivers to count that give different types of abilities. If I did talk about all the Slivers, this would be like a 30-minute video just based off of how many different abilities they could give each Sliver you control. However, I will say there are some Slivers that are missing that are absolutely perfect in the deck if you do want to upgrade it a little further. So the first card I do want to suggest is Sliver Legion. So for 5 mana, all Sliver creatures get +1/+1 for each other Slivers on the battlefield. So this gives all your Slivers an anthem on top of them having an anthem themselves, so this could get all your Slivers absolutely buffed so that you could swing in for the game. Also on top of that, I did also want to mention Sliver Overlord for another 5 mana commander. For 3 mana, you can search your library for a Sliver card, reveal that card, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library, and also does have another ability when you pay 3, you gain control of target Sliver. So it's a great tutor if you want to get a specific Sliver out of your deck, and on top of that, weirdly enough, I found that other ability of gaining control of target Sliver pretty useful because some people will play Changelings, and you can take control of that if you wanted to. So this one I highly recommend if you want to have a tutor for your Slivers. Also on top of that, we do have the first Sliver, a EDH staple. It does have Cascade, and Sliver spells you cast have Cascade as well. So a lot of people play this in CDH as a commander with a food chain setup. On top of that, it does act as a great commander by itself, even without food chain, because when you cascade into more Slivers, they will cascade into more Slivers, and you'll just have a whole army of Slivers on the board out of nowhere just in one swing away. So I would say this card is extremely impactful as well. You do also want some great support cards like Kindred Discovery, an absolute staple in tribal decks. It enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type. Whenever a creature you control of the chosen type enters the battlefield or attacks, you draw a card. So I will warn you something about this card. If you do have a lot of Slivers on the battlefield and you swing, you have to draw that many cards. It's not a May ability, so if you deck yourself, you may just lose the game if you draw too many cards, but most likely that's not the scenario. You're going to draw a lot of cards off of Kindred Discovery when you're playing Slivers and attacking them. So I did want to just give you that warning. On top of that, the last card I do want to mention is Sliver Hive. So what I do like about this card is the fact that it taps 1 mana of any color only to spend on Sliver spells, so it's a great tribal card for Slivers. slivers. You could also tap it for a colorless mana if it's not on a sliver spell, but I would say the most impactful part of this card is the fact that it has that 5 and tap ability. You put a 1/1 colorless sliver creature token onto the battlefield, activate this ability only if you control a sliver, but that's a minor downside because you're going to have a lot of slivers on the battlefield. So what I do like about this is the fact that you could hold off that mana if you wanted to during somebody else's turn, and if you don't have a response to anything else, you could just pay 5 and tap it just to make another sliver creature token on the battlefield. I will say there's a lot of other cards that I swapped in and swapped out in the deck list down below in the description if you do want to go check it out. And if you do notice, I did put the cards that I took out in the sideboard so that you could check out which ones you do want to take out. So with that said, thank you so much for coming by and watching this video on the new Precon deck, Sliver Swarm. This is absolutely a fun commander deck. It has all the slivers you want to make a fun deck out of it. I will say the land base needs a little bit of an upgrade, but that's completely okay. This is a fun deck out of the box right away. But I hope you enjoyed this upgrade video for the Sliver Swarm deck. There's a lot of things that I might have missed, so let me know down below in the comments which slivers did you think would be included. Also let me know down below in the comments which sliver is your favorite sliver out of them all. There's so much slivers to discuss and talk about. I mainly wanted to highlight the ones that won me the games the most and the ones that are pretty powerful out of the box. So with that said, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and with that out of the way, thank you for stomping by.